Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode on the Speak Sense podcast with me, Usama Musa at Muslim Amir. And today I have a guest who I cannot wait to introduce to you guys because his journey is just, there's so much inspiration from it. And I think for me personally, is one that's going to help a lot of you guys overcome many of your fears, inshallah, as we dive deep. So without further ado, let me give a warm welcome and help, inshallah, you can help me to welcome him too with a warm round of applause. It's my dear brother, Mr. Zulfaqar, who is a previous lawyer and now an online businessman. And one of the things that he does is he helps people overcome their fear of speaking through their own podcast. So please give me a warm welcome and help me give a warm welcome to our guest today.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you for the introduction.
No problem. So bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. Bismillah.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. So born and raised here in the UK, typical upbringing, neither rich nor poor. Did well in the education system because, well, most Asian parents are, they encourage, do well in the education system. Became a lawyer more because I needed to become a professional rather than it being something that I wanted to do. So went through that whole process, got the degree, climbed the corporate ladder, Alhamdulillah, qualified as a lawyer, and at one point even opened up my own law firm. But like I said, it was something that I did because I thought I had to do rather than something that I wanted to do. So it was a journey which was spent being stressed and miserable and anxious. So I packed it all in and since then just started various different business ventures and models. And that was a process in and of itself. And now I run two projects. The first project, which you kindly mentioned there, was, I'm helping other people overcome the fear of speaking and building self-esteem, confidence, and communication skills by starting a podcast. And then the other project is helping business owners scale by buying other businesses. And I suppose the third project is the self-improvement one, which is how we connected online, where at the moment I'm trying to go through 100 days at the gym without taking a day off, and I'm currently on day 55.
MashaAllah. That's amazing. First of all, regarding the journey in the gym and the fitness journey, may Allah keep you on that journey and accomplish your 100 days. And it's always nice to have that target. I remember when I would go through little patches, I would always set myself a 30-day target. And that always seemed to always work better because when you have that like 100 days, it's just 100 days. And then once you've completed the 100 days, inshallah, it becomes a habit where you can continue it. And obviously, we spoke a little bit offline and before we go on air, and just tell us a little bit about why you started the podcast journey and the self-improvement journey, just for our viewers, inshallah, to get an understanding or deeper understanding of this.
Yeah, so I grew up very shy, like really, really shy. I had a real fear of speaking, lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence, the whole thing. Like, it was social anxiety, which was so bad that I couldn't, literally make phone calls to the dentist or the doctor. Like literally if I had to make an appointment, I'd have phone in my hand and I'd literally script out what I'm going to say. So, hello, my name is Zulfaqar and I'm, feeling this or feeling that. And then I'm panicking and I'd panic so much that in the end, I wouldn't make that phone call. I say, forget it, it's too much effort, I can't be asked, So I had this massive fear of speaking, and it's made worse when you go through law school because everybody thinks you're a lawyer. You must be amazing at speaking. You must be fantastic. You're going to have any problems. But, one of the reasons why I chose to become a solicitor rather than a barrister was because barrister would mean standing up in court and speaking. And I thought, well, I'm not doing that. So I chose to go down the solicitor route, which was more office work, paperwork, that kind of thing. So yeah, I've had this fear of speaking ever since I can remember, and it's had a knock-on effect and changed, obviously, the direction of my life with the choices that I've made. But it's one of those things where, now I look back and, I genuinely believe that every human being is born with natural interests and passions and all of that and natural talents, but they're also born with challenges and obstacles and fears. So, and those are not there to discourage you or move away from there for you to step up to overcome those, and that will then obviously help you on your journey. So the opportunity to overcome this fear of speaking kept on coming. And for me now, I look back and it was basically a God trying to put these challenges for me to overcome. And every time it came up, I ran away. And obviously my life isn't going the direction I wanted it to go. And I realized it's because I've got this fear of speaking. And, if you're trying to run a business and you're scared of speaking, it's just not going to happen, because you've got to build relationships with people. You've got to put yourself out there. So I thought, what, I need to do something about this fear of speaking. So, initially I started off just writing articles online and creating a blog post and all of that. And then I started making videos online, started a YouTube channel. And then the next step was, starting a podcast. And it's just gone on from there. And so that was why I started it. The podcast was more a self-improvement tool, a personal development tool to better myself. And then I've used it to learn things. And Alhamdulillah, I've even made a business partnership out of it as well.
MashaAllah. And it's really incredible to hear that. And, for any of our viewers that are going through, any fears and challenges, especially the younger audience, inshallah, this story here can give you inspiration and motivation to, one, maybe face your challenges head on, face your fears head on. And number two, don't worry about the short term or where you're at now. Always know that Allah has a plan for you for the future, inshallah. And, and it's quite amazing listening to that, that you would have that anxiety just to make a call for an appointment with a dentist, not even a sales call, it's a call for your, subhanallah. And, it's actually quite incredible for someone like me to hear that, because I'm the complete opposite of that, right? So when I hear people actually, have these anxieties, I'm like, subhanallah, that must be so challenging to just, just a simple, because I have one of my brothers who's probably not as anxious in that regard, but still has his own sort of emotions towards these things. And he would, I can imagine how difficult life is, because you're just a simple task could take you hours to do because of that whole overthinking, right? It's that whole, I can't be bothered to do that. Or like you said, this is just too stressful, right? Something that for another person is just so easy to do, yet for some could be so stressful. And obviously there's going to be things, because it's personality traits. So your personality might have certain things that for you are very easy to do, which for my personality type would be extremely challenging. So, we all have our own challenges. Now, speaking of challenges, I would like to take you back to maybe a previous years. And I would like to ask you, what was it like for you growing up in the West as a Muslim?
Okay, good question. Now, this is a challenging question. I suppose, the society we live in today, like everybody's almost a victim now, and everyone's saying, oh, we've had this hardship and we've had that hardship. And yes, we have had hardships. Obviously, we're a Pakistani family. We did experience racism, but I don't see it as I was a victim of racism. It was just, kind of standard, and it wasn't as bad as how our parents got it. So, my father came to this country with my mother. My father got Paki bashed. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically, they used to see Pakistanis, and they used to beat them up just because they were Pakistani. So, they had a rough time in the West, and knowing what they went through.
Where are you in the UK?
West Yorkshire, so near Leeds and Bradford.
Okay.
So, yeah, obviously we had our challenges and we had difficulties, but alhamdulillah, life was, it was good. Like, our parents did all the hard work, and there was never any time where we had to struggle for having food on the table, or we were in real danger of anything like that. So life was pretty much on easy mode. And I suppose the biggest challenge really was the difference in, the cultural clash, if I can use that as the term. So basically, the Islamic system is different from modern Western civilization and the system we grew up in. And a lot of people might not agree with this, but I think they are directly opposed. I think they're two different systems. And if I'm being honest, I'm probably I have grown up more Western than I have grown up Muslim. And the reason for that is obviously the education system. It's been mainly, the schooling system in the West. It's about obviously getting the degree, getting education, getting a degree, and then getting a job and going through that process. And then obviously we had madrasa, going to mosque after school, but 1 hour versus 8 hours a day is going to obviously tilt the balance. So it's been, I would say, if I was to say, in percentage terms, how much of a good Muslim have I been? I would say less than, 15, 10%, if I'm being honest. And that's because I've been more growing up in a system which has been obviously more Western than Islamic. Now, I know that obviously comes down to me as well, but I think a lot of people are going through the same kind of thing. And it wasn't only until I reached the age of 19, 20 when I started taking Islam more seriously. So, I've gone through this education system. I've done well in school. I've done well in college. I've done well in university. But I'm thinking, is this it? Is this all there is to life? Like, is this, we're just going to study and then we're just going to go to work and then, climb the corporate ladder and that's it. So you could say that was probably my spiritual awakening. So I had kind of like an early crisis, like what's going on? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? And by asking those questions, that's when I started to read books. Before that, I would say it was more doing things as a Muslim as a formality. Well, my parents told me I'm a Muslim. They told me this is important. I'm doing it because all my friends and my family, they're all Muslims. And well, this is what Muslims should be doing. At 19, when I started studying, okay, now I'm trying to understand, okay, why do we do these things? Why does Islam say this? Why do we worship one God? Why, etc. And the purpose there was trying to basically find, what is the purpose of life? Because this Western system is leaving me empty. And that's also another reason why I left the corporate world and being a lawyer, because at the end of it all, I just felt empty.
Jazakallah khair for sharing such a personal, side of your journey. And I think obviously even 19, 20, you're still actually quite young. So for you to even try and find, let's say, your path within the deen at that age is actually quite good, because you're still at university at that age, and you're probably you've just started experiencing full freedom in terms of at university. Whether you moved away or not, I don't know, but for a lot of us, when we move away at uni, that's 18 to 21, 18 to 25, you start experiencing life in a different way, and the circle of friends that you make is super important in that age and stuff. So the fact that you even had that, even just started to ask those questions and start to research is really, really impressive. And I think, as Muslims, obviously we're always our biggest self-critics, or, own critics. We critique ourselves a lot, and we always seem to think, so when you say I was only a good Muslim 10 to 15%, well, what's the parameter of that? And what metrics are you using to actually, measure that? Because we might think that we're being bad Muslims, and in the eyes of Allah, we're very good Muslims, and vice versa. You might think you're the best of Muslims, and in the eyes of Allah, you're actually not that good. So, what are the metrics that we use? So for any viewers out there, this just goes to show that we all go through these emotions. So, if you're somebody who thinks that you're being a bad Muslim, that's just the shaitan playing games with you. Continue to do the good acts, continue to seek Allah and ask Allah to put you on the straight and narrow, to ask Allah for the guidance. And if you're sincerely asking Allah for that, then Allah will inshallah make it easy for you. We all have journeys, and we all come from different experiences, and yet you'll find people that had the craziest of lifestyles are now muftis, and people that were being raised in a very scholared house are now not Muslim. So everyone has their own path and their own journey. And just going back to your parents, I think this is super important to because you said a key sentence, and I really like that, whereas you said you always had food on the table, so they never made you feel like there was anything going on. And I think that is such a compliment, and I don't think we will understand it, like especially my generation or younger, because obviously my parents went through it in the 90s and we were children. We didn't, I saw it, I felt it, I experienced the racism. But when I look at my siblings now who are, you know, under the age of, let's say, 20, they're so oblivious to it in so many ways. And I can only imagine what it was like in the, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s for the first generation of you know, immigrants that came over. Because even now there's that documentary on BBC, which is going back to what I can't remember, it's called, something to do, bringing it back to Birmingham or something. I can't remember what it's called. But where they're actually documenting what life was like for the South Asians that migrated to Birmingham, and they're reliving those experiences. It's quite clever how they're doing it, and it just goes to show, you know, the racism they experienced, the hardships they went through, how a lot of the Asian community became self-employed, obviously because employment levels were so low, and the first people to get sacked were people of color or an ethnic background, and they had to obviously make money one way or another for themselves. And actually that's why you see a lot of the independent like off license or shops are owned by South Asians, because a lot of them had to become self-employed. So, you know, and it just goes to show the tenacious attitude that these people had, and, you know, your parents would fall into that category. And Alhamdulillah, you were able to always have food on the table. I know a lot of people that probably didn't have that luxury. So Alhamdulillah for that. So now, staying along the same path, what did you, so, because obviously I'm going to assume this, and it's wrong to assume this, right? Because you're of an Asian background. But you already said that law wasn't something that you know, wanted to do, right? So what did you want to do when you were younger? What was your aspiration? Like, this is what Zulfaqar wanted in the future.
I suppose this is the issue. So if you know what you want to do, if you know, like, I'll give you an example. My sister, for example, like, she knew she wanted to be a teacher when she was 3 years old. So she was role playing being a teacher since the age of 3. So that path was pretty clear and obvious for her. Alhamdulillah, she became a teacher. For me, like, outside of obviously the, you know, when you watch football or you watch a movie, you want to be a movie star, you want to be a football star, there wasn't really an industry, or I want to grow up to be this, I want to grow up to be that. It was literally just go to school, get good grades, and go to mosque, do well at mosque, and that was it. Like, you know, there was no, okay, I want to be this, I want to be that. It was just, okay, I just need to get a degree, I just need to become a professional. And then when you make that choice, you know, you're about 15 years old, 16 years old, where you're going to leave high school and you're going to go into college, and you have to choose what subjects you want to do. You know, and I'm sat there with my sister. I'm like, you know, I don't know what I want to be. I don't know which subjects to choose. All I know is I don't want to do science, because I suppose, you know, that's a topic for another day, because that's going to be more. I didn't like science because the science teacher, the biology teacher that I had, she didn't think I was good at science, and she didn't want me to do the higher paper, which, because I had a lack of self-esteem and I've always been praised for my work, that was a shock to my system. So I just assumed I'm too thick for science, or science is too hard for me, I'm not good at science. So science was out of the equation. So when you're picking a profession back then, you know, if you did chemistry, physics and maths, you could do any degree. You could go into doctor, you could become a pharmacist or whatnot. But because I didn't want to do any science, it says all of those professions went out the window. So I'm sat there with my sister. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be. And she's like, you know, what about this and what about that? And I'm like, no, that's science, that's science, that's science. And then she said, well, what about a lawyer? And I'm like, okay, that's a dignified profession. I don't need to do science for it. I'll become a lawyer. So that's how that happened. And it goes back to this idea that, well, during childhood, I didn't really have any aspirations to be anything, or I didn't know, I didn't even think about it. And I think that's a problem for a lot of people as well. So they just go through this schooling system and they never ask to really think about it, or, you know, they don't have that self-reflection kind of thing. And, you know, even in adulthood, people are still struggling with this now, and you see it every day now. Like, you know, people are fed up with the corporate system, they're fed up with their jobs, but they don't know what else to do. And it comes back to the fact that they've never really sat down with themselves, reflected, and really thought about what it is that they want to do.
Yeah, that's really deep, man, because you know, it's a throwback, because teachers have such a big impact on us, man. They really do. And just because when you mentioned about the higher paper and lower paper, I had an English teacher that was so racist. In front of the class, she would call me Bin Laden and stuff, just to
Wow.
keep me and stuff. And it was. She even once graded me in each. So she taught me media studies and English. So she was a teacher for both.
Yeah.
And I remember once in media, she gave me an E for a project, which my partner on the same project got a B in. And she said,
Wow.
I gave you an E because I don't want to give you any more than that. She literally bluntly said it like that. And my personality was, I'll just laugh about it. I was like, whatever, I don't really care for what you're going to say and give me. And then funnily enough, she didn't let me sit the higher paper in English. And then when I went to college, I ended up doing AS and A2, English Literature and Language, because I had to, rather than stay at college for 3 years, they gave me the option to do first year and second year in one course. And I ended up doing it in English. And it just goes to show that, subhanAllah, teachers have such a big impact, because if I didn't go through that experience at college where I was like forced into picking a subject that I had to do AS and A2 in 1 year and then actually doing it and excelling in it, I would have probably had that same, fear of English, because my teacher at school didn't let me sit the highest. So she made me feel like I was dumber than I am, but I knew that I was good at it. I just knew that it was my conflict with her. And just goes to show with you, that sort of experience, how much it can impact, somebody. And it's amazing how, the difference that your sister from a young age knew what she wanted, and you in the same household, yet you didn't really know. And this goes to show to any of our viewers, we all have different paths in life. We can't, people think differently and are driven in different ways. And, you're always, success is relative, it's subjective to you. It's, your sister views her success as being a good teacher. Your success is something completely different. Might be peace of mind, might be financial freedom, might be doing what you want to do, like starting a podcast. So I think that's incredible. And I think there's a lot of value in what you just shared there. And I think, funnily enough, when I went to college, I honestly, at least it was good that you had your sister to lean on to kind of help you. I honestly didn't realize going to college that this meant that, this is going to actually have dictate where my life's going to go in terms of profession. I didn't even think of a profession at college. I just did whatever because I was like, I just need to go to college because that's the thing to do now.
That's what, exactly. So like, what did you choose? And obviously you went to college, and what did you do at university? And then did you actually do anything with the degree, or how did your path go?
For me personally,
yes.
Right, so I never wanted to go to university, right?
Okay.
Never. That was like, I'm done at college, I'm done with education. And the only reason I was going to college was because there was the bursary, or EMA they called it, where we got like £30 a week, I think it was, or £50 a week to go. I can't remember how much it was, but they paid you if you had attendance, and all you had to do was just attend all the lessons. And I still didn't even attend all the lessons. I ended up taking I took use of maths, which wasn't maths, it was use of maths, so helping you with like it was a type of maths that helped you, for example, like algorithms and for like bus routes and that sort of thing. So it's the application of maths in a practical sense. But I got a U in that, so that was one of the things I had to drop. And then I took drama just because I was good at acting. And the irony here is I ended up dropping drama because of the theory work. So I did none of the theory work in my first year of drama. Theatre studies it was called. And and I got an A star in the acting, in the practical, but I didn't sit the theory. I got doing the theory. So I got a D overall. And the lecturer said to me, he said, listen, if you're gonna go into second year, there's more theory in second year than first year. So if you're not willing to do the theory, and clearly you're not willing to do the theory, I advise that you don't continue theatre studies. And the irony here is that I ended up taking English Literature and Language, AS and A2 in 1 year, which if I just carried on with drama, I would have had half of what I had to do in terms of writing and reading, but it just didn't make sense for me to, anyway. And then I did media studies and business. So, but then when I came out of college, I started working. I was always doing these waitering shifts and whatever, and I became a manager of a restaurant at 19. And then life takes you on a journey. I ended up applying for uni through somebody. They actually ended up doing my whole application. I just had to do like the personal statement, and even then they did that. And funnily enough, they put references in my personal statement because they were from a law background. And that was the first time I'd actually seen references applied in this way, because when it came to the education system, I was always just a practical guy, making, just living my life basically. So, and then ended up uni. When I applied for university, I applied for marketing. They came back to me saying, we believe you should do hospitality management because you're already a manager in hospitality. So ended up doing that. And it was actually really good because hospitality management was basically like a business degree that was applied to a specific industry. So we ended up learning all types of things that were related to business rather than just going into finance or marketing or HR or whatever. I actually ended up doing all of those subjects within my course because it was all applied to the industry that we are studying over the 4-year period. Again, what a waste of a degree. The benefit I got out of uni was I got to move out of my house and I got to learn how to be an adult. So Alhamdulillah, we benefited.
So definitely, like I actually did stay at home for university, and so that, you know, that has its benefits. Obviously, there's the financial benefits. You're not burdened with the finances, but I didn't get that experience which you got, which was learn how to be an adult. So it took me longer to go through that process. So, you know, obviously there's pros and cons to everything, but yeah, I mean, like, I suppose that's why, you know, a lot of people that go through the education system, and this was me as well, we struggle with business, we struggle with entrepreneurship, because that whole process, you know, the first 20 years of your life, and then after that, the employment years, it's kind of like you've always got somebody there telling you what to do, how to do it, and then you get feedback. And you could get hooked on that, especially, you know, if you do well in that system. You know, you always constantly get told you're smart, you're talented, well done, great work. And if that happens for so long, you get addicted to it without even realizing it. It becomes an unconscious addiction. So that when you start a business, firstly, there's nobody there telling you what to do. And that's the first struggle. And then you're second guessing everything you do because you don't know whether you're doing it right. And then when you do something, there's nobody there to give you feedback. There's nobody there to say, well done. There's nobody there to say, do this instead. And that's why it's a huge struggle, especially for those that do well in the education system, to start their own business and to thrive. So even like the last 5 or 6 years, it's been more about personal development and self-improvement and overcoming these fears and obstacles than it has been a business or entrepreneurship journey. And you know, that goes back again to that upbringing, and I would say it's, you know, I wouldn't call the education system a scam like, you know, some of the online gurus do today, but it still is inadequate in that sense. And for me, it's the 3 big skills, the 3 things, you know, self-esteem, confidence, and communication skills. The education system, and I would say even the employment system, doesn't do a good enough job in building those 3 things, in my opinion.
I completely agree with that. And I actually just want to quickly take it back to anyone that's going to university. One of the mistakes I made, and I hope you can learn from this mistake, is that build your connections with your lecturers and build your network. Because that's one of the mistakes I made. I've always had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. And like you said, bro, the system doesn't allow us to be able to build those skills as entrepreneurs or business owners. And, you know, I'm now, you know, almost 30, and I've had a year, probably 15 years of my life trying to build businesses, and failing and succeeding and failing and succeeding and failing. And I think one of the key things that you mentioned there, which was, you know, seeking, let's say, positive information from people, or that recognition, or having people to bounce ideas off. For me, for example, for the last 15 years, I've always tried to build businesses with people. Unfortunately, that's when things don't really go well, because you're trying to bring people into something that's your idea. They're not as passionate as you. They don't want to as much as you. And then one of the things that I also didn't realize, for example, when I went to university, if I'd utilized my network with my lecturers and put the work in to my business and connected the dots with my business, with my network, my business would have flown so easily, so quickly, because the network is there. Like, you don't realize, like, we had lecturers that were coming from firms like DHL, or, you know, and they were, you know, people and C-level executives trying to teach you business stuff. Like, if you just network with this kind of person and like let him tap into his network of people, you know, your possibilities are endless. You could be, you know, so all these things are very important. And I think what the schooling system lacks, and I think there's so many things we learn at school that are so unnecessary. Like, why did I learn about King Henry VIII's wives? And why did I learn about certain things that I never use in my life? But at the same time, the schooling system has a responsibility to teach us things that are really important, the fundamentals, like managing our finances, like, you know, how to invest, like how to take care of people that are around us, you know, things that are actually important. Like, why is first aid not taught at school and in college as a requirement? You know, I've graduated now and I don't have any first aid certification. I need to go out of my way to get that. That's something that should, I think, be, you know, something within the schooling system, because it's, you know, to do with health, to do with protection, to do with, you know, just having some basic skills, you know. Obviously, a good thing that they teach like food tech and stuff, because I think that's, you know, that's probably one of the most useful skills that you can learn, but you don't realize it when you're a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
When we were in food tech, I can honestly count on my hand how many people actually enjoyed it for the benefit of learning how to cook. The otherwise, it would just be a mess, you know. So, but anyway, that's all fun and games. Now let's look at business, inshallah. And, you know, obviously how long would you say, very quickly, you've had your business journey so far? You started your law firm, including your own law.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, I mean, I was a consultant solicitor for a while as well. So basically, that was kind of a separate business. So, you know, I'd consult for different law firms.
Okay.
And then from then on, I moved into, I had my own law firm. That only lasted less than a year. You know, it goes back to what you said earlier. When you go into partnership with people, it's very difficult. You know, you need to make sure you go into partnership with the right person. You know, you need to have the right vision. You need to make sure you can work well together, and not just jump in because somebody's a good friend of yours. And I went into business with somebody who was a good friend of mine, and we didn't figure out who's good at what. We basically had two completely different working styles, and it's just not compatible. So if you just jump in with your friends and you don't figure this stuff out, well, you're either going to lose your friendship and your business, or, you know, things could go sour. So I stepped out, and alhamdulillah, the friendship, you know, it was rocky at that time, but now it's all fine. We're still good friends. On top of that, obviously, like I said, I really didn't enjoy that field whatsoever. And then, you know, I just went through it's funny that you asked me this question of what did I want to be when I was younger, and I answered, well, I didn't know. So once I got out of that legal stage, or, you know, I don't want to be a lawyer, and then it came back to that question, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? And I just didn't know the answer. And you can think and you can think and you can think on this question. It's not going to do anything for you. The only way you're going to figure it out is by doing things, trying things, failing with things. So, you know, I went through this period of years starting different things. At one time I was a copywriter, and at one time I was designing websites, at one time I was doing Facebook advertising. There's probably not a business model I haven't tried. And it was more me trying to find something which firstly fits in with my vision and ideal. You know, one of the things that I hated about the corporate system was I wake up at a time I don't want to wake up in, I sit in terrible traffic, I do a job that I don't like. By the time I get home, I'm just too tired to do anything. So I'll just eat, probably watch a little bit of TV and go to sleep. And then that routine happens week after week, week after week, month after month, year after year. And that's how you become miserable. So I hated that lifestyle. So they tell you, well, if you don't like your job, start a business, you know, especially these days with online entrepreneurs, you know, the dream is become an entrepreneur, start your own business, and, you know, you can have freedom and flexibility and all of that. So that's what I did. But I realized, well, when you start your business and when you become an entrepreneur, you have even less time than you do when you have a normal job. And that basically kind of defeated the purpose of why I left the corporate world. And it comes back to this idea of doing this self-reflection. So when I sat down, you know, and had this, you know, self-reflection, and, you know, this wasn't a one-time thing. It was something that I developed over months and months and even years. It was, you know, what kind of life do I want to live? So before you start anything, this is what I advise people now, you know, before you start a business or start a new venture, the first thing you got to do is undo the conditioning and programming that you've been through. So the first conditioning and programming for me was school and college and the corporate system. you have to undo that, because if you start a business using that same programming, you're going to struggle. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is ask yourself these important questions, like, what type of person do you want to be? What type of life do you want to live? What do you want to do with your time? And when I asked myself these questions, like, what my perfect day is: praying my namazes, praying Quran, spending time with my children, going to the gym every day, reading my books, as you can see in the background there. I love reading. And then when I sat and thought about this, is like, how much does that even cost? Like, how much do I need to make that happen? And I'm like, most of that stuff is free, other than paying bills and obviously you want a little bit of extra. I don't really need to make millions or whatever everyone's telling you to make these. You need to become a 7-figure entrepreneur, 8-figure entrepreneur. So I'm like, well, the problem with the first corporate system was I was focusing on the career first. So I'm focusing on becoming a lawyer. I'm doing all of that. And then if I get time, I'll fit in religious life, I'll fit in family time, I'll fit in hobbies and interests. Then I moved into entrepreneurship. And again, that took precedent. And it was like, well, okay, once I've done that, I'll try and fit in my prayers, I'll fit in my activities, I'll fit in my family time. And both those models just didn't work for me. So I made a shift quite recently, actually. And it was, okay, my priorities now are religion and spirituality, family time, going to the gym, reading, basically doing the things that I want to do. So now how can I start a business or do a business model that fits in with that lifestyle? In other words, I'm making these things a priority first and finding a business model to fit into that. And that's why I've started these, relatively 2 new projects where it's more about the flexibility that they offer, which allows me to do these things whilst at the same time bringing in an income and making things happen. So for the viewers that are listening, obviously it depends on what stage you're at. And I know a lot of people are in the employment system and they don't really particularly want to be there. It's awful. And you're not quite sure whether you should jump into business. I wouldn't jump into business because there's a lot of upskilling you need to do. Obviously, the longer you've been in that system, the harder it is to come out of it and start your own business. So the first thing really what you need to do is figure out exactly what type of life you want to live, what you want to do on a basis, and then how much do you actually need? Because if you only need $5,000 a month, there's no point you trying to make 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, because that's a completely different lifestyle.
Jazakallah khair. I think that is spot on. And I think, you hit a couple of key points there. And I think one of them, first and foremost, is as Muslims, and it's a mistake a lot of us make, is that we don't prioritize the deen, we don't prioritize salah, we don't prioritize Quran, we don't prioritize the, ibadah, the nawafil, the extra, prayers or acts of worship. And then, like you said, family or your side hobbies or whatever it is that you enjoy doing. And I think that number one, obviously that is super important, that beforehand, the way that you were looking at it was, when I have the time, I fit those things in. And that shift to now actually, no, they're my priority. That's how I'm going to live my life. And I think that is super, super powerful. And I think you would obviously vouch for this. How much of a difference does it make to your mood, your energy, your productivity? Like, you're probably always smiling now, right? Because you're doing all the things you love first. And these stuff that your projects that you're working on are coming secondary now. You're probably seeing your wife more, your children more, your whatever it is that you're doing. It has more of a profound effect upon your, the other actions that you do. So now you probably, when you do your projects, your work, your business, your podcast, you're actually more enthusiastic about it. You turn up with that mentality of, I'm loving this. This is what I want to do now. This is the time I've dedicated to this. And I think that's super amazing. So very quickly for me, I'd love to know, like, what's your biggest achievement in business so far?
Good question. Tough question. Like, I suppose I'll put it like this, when I graduated with a law degree, I thought I'd made it. Then I realized the law degree doesn't mean anything. When I became a lawyer, qualified as a lawyer, I thought I made it. Then I went back to work and realized nothing's changed. I haven't made it. And when I hit a certain, revenue figure, like, I don't really like talking about revenue figures, but when I hit a certain revenue figure, I thought, once I hit that, I've made it. And then when I hit it, it didn't feel like I made it. Yeah, things were still the same. when I bought the flashy car, I thought I'll have made it. Got the flashy car, didn't make it. And I suppose the point that I'm trying to make there is, we grow up with this conditioning that if you achieve this or if you do that, you've made it. What I've actually come to realize now is there is no making it. And there's just the process, and there's just the next stage, and there's the next stage and the next stage. So this might not seem like a good answer, but the biggest achievement is realizing that there is no end goal here. There is no achievement. There's just the next stage of development. There's just the next stage of the process. And the reason why that's the biggest achievement is because all of those examples that I gave you there, when I said, if I hit this, I'll have made it, what followed was a period of depression, anxiety, misery. Like, I've done what I thought I was supposed to do. I've got the achievement. Why am I still feeling this way? And it comes down to this expectancy. If I hit this achievement, if I hit this result, if I get here, I'm expecting that I've made it and life is done and I'm cushy. But when you get there, the reality does not fit the expectation, and that impacts your mood. Whereas if you start seeing everything as a learning process, as a journey, as this is the next stage of development, this is the next stage of development, the expectation is different. You're not, you're using goals and achievements more as a map rather than an end goal or a destination, so that when you get there, you're still prepared to move to the next level, as opposed to once you get there and looking around saying, is this it?
I think that's super powerful. And I think it's actually one of the things that we do with my clients when we map out their, business journeys. We use those goals as, key points, key milestones you want to hit along the journey. And I actually always say this, like, you should always plan a macro goal and work backwards. So, but, life is, like you said, it's always about stages. Like when I was asking you the question, as I was asking you it, I was actually gonna say it, and I was like, let me just, stop and let you answer it. But I was gonna say, I would have assumed your answer to be that your biggest achievement is actually the shift that you've made recently, than more than anything else. Because that shift, to me, just seeing how happy you are right now, just speaking to you, and obviously I don't know you prior to this call, I've never spoken to you other than LinkedIn, but your radiant smile, just, you can see how happy you're, like, mashallah, you can feel, even though we're miles away, I can feel it through the screen, right? And I think that in itself is a big achievement. And I think, like you said, I'm really happy that you actually mentioned all the materialistic things, and that wasn't your biggest achievement, because a lot of people are money driven or materialistically driven, having that flashy car, the flashy house, this, that, or the other. And I think it's just super amazing to see that actually, no, those things don't mean anything, because once you get them, you're just on to the next thing. And it's like when you're in a salary, or sorry, in a job, and you're after a salary, and you're like, okay, I know if I get £40,000 a year, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be good. My finances are going to be good. Like I can get married, I can do whatever. But you don't realize that as soon as you hit 40K, 6 months in, you're like, I want 45, right? 40 is not enough. I want 50. 40 is not enough. I want 60. And you're always, as humans, and as Allah tells us, to quote the ayah, and I believe I might, وَخَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ عَجُولًا, I think the ayah is, I'm not 100% sure, but it basically means that you're created in a hurry, you're created in haste, and you're created in a way where, you always forget. So we're forgetful. So once I achieve, let's say my achievement right now, or my goal is to get a house, right? As soon as I get my house, I forget that's, because I'm on to the next thing. Like after the house, what am I on to next? Like we're always on to the next thing. You don't even appreciate the moment.
Yeah.
As soon as you get your house, you don't even give yourself like a week to enjoy it. As soon as you get your house, you're like, yes, what's the next thing I want?
What's the next thing? Yeah.
Well, subhanAllah. Okay, so maybe a question that is maybe more suited to you. And I think, again, I think you might surprise us here with your answers, or it might be one that we expect. What's been your biggest lesson or challenge so far?
In business?
Business or your personal life, up to you. Or you could do both.
Biggest challenge, like, it's it goes back to what, we've kind of touched upon, like, I 100% now believe that, everybody has their own natural talents, interests, and hobbies, which they need to maximize. You need to obviously dive into those things, but that's only half the equation. The other half is you need to realize what is your biggest challenge as an individual. So, the branding that I have for my passion project with the podcast and stuff is called the Minotaurs, Minotaur Mastery. My podcast is called the Minotaur's Maze. And that comes back to this idea of, obviously, the Minotaur, Theseus and the Minotaur is a Greek myth. It's a story that we learned when I was 7-8 years old in school. And, the Minotaur was a half man, half bull beast. Like, do you know the story, or, about
I'm
asked before?
not aware of it. I might know the story. I don't know the Minotaur.
Okay, so we learned this in primary school, and it's just stuck with me ever since. So it's a Greek myth, and it's basically the Minotaur is a half bull, half man, beast, living in a labyrinth, living in a maze, and 7 boys, 7 girls are sent as sacrifice to the Minotaur, until one day Theseus, the hero, decides enough is enough. He's going to go in and he's going to kill the Minotaur, and stop this injustice from happening. Before he goes in, he's met by Princess Ariadne, who gives him a sword and a string, sword to fight the Minotaur and string to find his way outside of the maze. And he's actually the son of a king. So before he leaves, his father says, "Don't go, you're gonna die." And then he says, "If you do survive, on the way back, change the sail of your boat to white, because if it's black, it means you're dead. If it's white, I know you're alive." He goes into the maze, he beats the Minotaur, he comes out, he forgets to change his sail. His father sees the black sail, thinks he's dead, and he kills himself. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Wow.
For me, that's a metaphor. And that's what the whole branding of what I'm doing right now is based behind. It's the metaphor. What is that story symbolic of? Well, life is a maze. Our mind is a maze. That's the intricate maze. And inside the maze is the Minotaur. The internal Minotaur is your fears, your challenges, your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, that kind of thing. And then the external Minotaur, those are your hardships and your challenges in life. So you have a choice. You can either face those challenges and become Theseus, become the hero of your story, or you can be one of those that runs and hides, in which case you'll be the sacrificial boys and girls. And on that journey, you will need people to help you. You will need teachers, you will need guides, you will need people to help you. That's Ariadne, who gave the sword and the string, and then the sword of the string. Those are the strategies, the tools that you need to get better with whatever your craft is. And even at the end, when you think you've been successful, you still need to take care of your responsibilities, because if you don't, then even your triumph will become tragedy. So that's when he forgot to change his sail, his father killed himself. That's symbolic of, people think they've made it and they forget their responsibilities. And then by forgetting their responsibilities, everything just comes crashing down. So the point is, the fears, the insecurities, your internal Minotaurs, your internal problems, those are specific to you, because those are the opportunities I believe God is giving you to overcome these obstacles and become the better version of yourself, the next version of yourself, etc. And even with the external challenge, obviously everybody's got different challenges. Some people have hardships in terms of finances, some have disabilities. Everybody's got different challenges, but they're there for you to go through those and become the next version of yourself. So obviously the fear of speaking was one of my biggest ones. The other one is, I've been very unfit and unhealthy. I might look skinny, but it was really unfit, in every sense of the word. So that was another kind of Minotaur of mine. And obviously then the shift between employment to entrepreneurship, something I struggled with massive, and even now I still say I will struggle with that a lot. So all of these are challenges, but I would say it comes down to those 3 things that I keep mentioning: self-esteem, confidence, and communication skills. So if you don't have self-esteem, it doesn't matter what you build, it's going to come crashing down eventually. So build self-esteem first. So I had a lack of self-esteem. Everything that I've been doing so far has been to build that self-esteem. And then with that comes confidence. And then with that comes communication skills as well. So, you mentioned it earlier when you were giving advice to students, network with people. Well, if you haven't got self-esteem, you're not going to speak to anyone. If you haven't got confidence, you're not going to speak to anyone. If you don't have communication skills, you're not going to speak to anyone. You build those 3 things, then you go out there, you're going to build network, you're going to build connections, and that's going to open up opportunities. So if I was to put it down to one thing, it's building self-esteem when you don't have it. And I'll actually tell you a funny story. I mean, it's not really funny, but when I was 19, I went on this spiritual kind of journey that I was talking to you about. And I don't know if you heard of it, but in Spain, in I've forgotten what the place is called, Rosales. Anyway, it's a spiritual retreat in Spain. And they used to do weekends there. I think they still do it, but there was an Al Ghazali weekend, and one of the teachers was Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, which I'm sure you know and most people know. So one morning, it was a 3-day kind of thing. So we stayed there for a night. So one morning at the breakfast table, I'm sat there. There's another gentleman there, and Alhamdulillah, the Sheikh's there, sat next to me. So we're there having breakfast, and I didn't think anything of it. And then later on, my sister's like, "What did you talk about?" Like, "What do you mean? You were sat next to the Sheikh. What did you talk about?" And I'm like, "Nothing." She's like, "What? People would die to have the opportunity to be with the Sheikh, to ask him questions, and you said nothing." And the reason I said nothing was, one, I didn't have the self-esteem, the confidence, or the communication skills, and secondly, it was ego. So because I did well in the education system, everybody's been calling me smart, this and that and the other, I automatically assume that if I open my mouth, I need to ask a really clever, really intelligent question. And if I don't, I'm going to sound stupid. So it's better just to not say anything at all. In other words, that lack of self-esteem, that fear of speaking, basically took away one of the greatest opportunities I will ever have of picking one of the greatest Muslim minds of our time. So if you don't deal with these issues, you will miss out on so many opportunities. But if you do deal with them, you'll never have a lack of opportunity.
Jazakallah khair for sharing that amazing story. And I think that is really everything that you just said there was spot on. And I think that the story that you mentioned just before that one with the Minotaur, I think that one is very deep. And I like the way that you took the metaphors out of it. I think that is really cool. I mean, if you're able to read any story, there's always going to be morals that you can take out of them. And I think the ones that you just took out of that story were profound and deep, and very well thought out as well. Clearly that story's resonated with you in terms of you've had a lot of time to think about it and absorb as much out of it as you can. And I like what you've ended there with the Sheikh. I think that's super important. You don't realize sometimes the opportunity you have till it's gone. And I think that's super important. And staying along this sort of theme, what would be one piece of advice you would give to 20-year-old you? I know you were 19 with the Sheikh. So what would be one advice you would give if you could sit down now with, young Z and speak to him? What would be one piece of advice you could give him, or you would?
Yep. Don't focus on career. Don't focus on status. Don't focus on wealth. Focus on building self-esteem, confidence, and communication skills. With these 3 things, you can make any business and any career work. Without these 3 things, no business and no career is going to work.
That's really cool. Okay, and what would be one business tip you would give to our audience? Doesn't matter how old, doesn't have to be young Z, it could be just now. What would be one business tip you would give?
The greatest gift you can give yourself is to overcome the fear of what people might think. And this is even bigger for the Asian community and even Muslims, I would say. And it goes back to this idea of self-esteem and confidence, even the fear of speaking. At the end of the day, it's the fear of judgment, of criticism, it's the fear of what people might think. In business, if you have this fear of what people think, you're going to basically go through life and the business journey with the handbrake on. You're going to be very restricted with what you do. You're going to be second guessing everything. You're going to be doubting everything. And it's not in your benefit. And it's, at the end of the day, it's about opinions of people who don't even really matter to you. That's the killer. That's the worst thing. Obviously, there's going to be family and friends who are close to you. They might matter. I mean, they will matter. But for the most part, in business, you're going to have to put yourself out there. You're going to have to try things. You're going to have to fail. You're going to fall flat on your face. if you're concerned about what people might think, you're not even going to try those things. And if you don't even try those things, you're not going to build the experience, you're not going to build the skills, and you're not going to build the grit and the determination and enough failures to eventually see success. So, get rid of this need for validation, of approval, of permission, and absolutely get rid of this fear of what people might think.
I think that's very important. And I think, mashallah, in that, there's really, how you've just connected everything that you've just said there is super important for anybody that's watching this, that is going through these, experiences in life, to be able to really take that value and try and apply it in their life and try and implement it. And I think it is super important. And I think, when it comes to business in particular, I think, you can't sit there and worry about what people are going to think. You just don't have the time, because business is about making high pressure decisions and high pressure time frames in ways that's going to impact your business, your life, the life of those around you. So you don't even have the time to take into account like what my auntie and so is going to be thinking of me, right? And I think as human beings, the minute we start living the life to fulfill our desires and ourselves within obviously this Islam boundaries, that's when you really find the true fruits and the true happiness and the true essence of life. If you're always living in what people think of you and what people want from you, it's just stress upon stress upon stress. I was talking to my friend yesterday. He has a nice apartment, and he's had his nice apartment for a few years now. And when he first got that apartment, he got it when we were a little bit young. And he was saying to me yesterday, I got this apartment just to prove to everyone that, I'm something or whatever. And I now realize it just means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And it's that whole thing of when you're trying to live your life for others, you're never happy. Mm-hmm. You live life for yourself. And it's going back to that thing that you said. If I need £300 to survive a month, £300 to survive a month, and I can live a happy life doing what I want to do, khalas, get your £300 and do that. I know, for example, and this is so true because it resonated with me, especially during COVID. Prior to COVID, I was always, working crazy hours, making however much money I could make, whatever. And the happiest I ever was when I was making literally £900 a month, making several thousand to £900 a month. But I was spending my time doing what I love to do.
Yes.
And I was like, and subhanAllah, the barakah as well, because a lot of the money previous to that, it was through maybe things that weren't halal income or whatever. The minute I started getting that £900, it was all through halal revenue, like how halal work, halal earnings. The barakah in that £900, I would pay everything I had to pay, and I would have money to spend.
MashaAllah.
When I was making the thousands of pounds, wallahi, the thousands of pounds finished. They'd finished before they even come to my bank account. And it was, and it was that was an amazing experience for me, because I was like, wow, how does this even make sense? I'm able to save money at £900 a month, and before I couldn't even save a penny. So, these things are, super important. Okay, let's take us away from that a minute. Would you say that you have any sort of routines, so like a morning routine, an evening routine, maybe a midday routine, that you abide by and stick to, or are you someone who just every day as it comes and fluctuates?
Both. So basically, like obviously when you're in the corporate system, like, it's a routine in and of itself. Like you wake up at the same time, you dress the same, you go on the same journey, and then you start work the same. So that's a routine in and of itself. Obviously, when you're doing your own thing, it's a bit more difficult. Now, you need to rely on yourself to be disciplined and that and this and that. So I've tried many different morning routines, and even now, like I do have a kind of morning routine,
okay,
but I don't always stick to it. And being open and honest, obviously Fajr is like 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't always make it, so that takes out most of the routine. But the perfect morning routine is obviously wake up, do wuzu, pray Fajr, pray a little bit of the Arabic Quran, pray a little bit of the English translation, and I do have a little visualization kind of meditation as well of, who I want to be, where I want to be, and what kind of life I want to live, etc. And then depending on the time of year, so the gym, obviously that's something that I'm trying to do every day now. But because of the flexibility that I've got right now, I change it up. So sometimes I might go in early, sometimes I might do work and go in a little bit later. But that's more around, I'm trying to get to the gym at the time when it's the least active. In other words, there's less people there more than anything else.
I always avoid peak hours. I can't go peak hours.
Yeah. And then yes, after that, basically what I found with routines, you can either have a strict routine, which isn't going to work. Well, it didn't work for me, or you can be a bit flexible. So I've always been very organized, very punctual, and always had a very strict routine. And that did great for me in the education system and in the employment system. In the business world, it's a hindrance because you can't have a strict routine, because you're fighting fires. A car's going to come up, something else is going to come up, especially if you're working from home, which I am right now. A family thing's going to come up, your children are going to do this. If you have a strict routine, you miss one thing. I found my whole routine's gone and everything's messed up. So now
motivator as well when you miss something off your routine.
Yeah. So now it's more, okay, these are the things that I want to get in, but it's not at a set time anymore. So those 5 things that I mentioned to you earlier, praying the namazes, praying Quran and translation, going to the gym, reading, they are things that I'm going to do in the day, but there's no set time of when I'm going to do them anymore. Because when I did set a set time, I missed it and I'd end up being more frustrated. So now I work from my Google Calendar. Basically, I have set blocks for everything. So I have set blocks dedicated for working hours. And then if something does come up, I can just easily move it up and down. If I don't pray my Quran in the morning, I'll pray in the evening. Same with the reading. And then the gym, like I said, either early morning, if not before afternoon hits, I'll get it done.
Nice. That's really cool. And staying along this line then, what's one tip you would like to leave our audience with today? That's like, the tip from Zulfaqar that's gonna, wow us, one piece of value from you.
I don't know if it's gonna wow you, but it's literally the same thing that I've been saying throughout this conversation. Focus on building your self-esteem, focus on building your confidence, and focus on building your communication skills. And I would define those as self-esteem is the relationship that you have with yourself. Confidence is the relationship that you have with others. Communication is the bridge between the two. You need all 3. If you're lacking one of these, you're going to struggle. There's confident people out there, but they're lacking self-esteem. So, you might think they're confident, they're great, and they build something, but because they don't have that self-esteem, eventually they'll have burnout, they'll have insecurities, they'll have doubts, and then they'll just crash. So you need to build all 3 and do what you can to build all those 3, because like I said before, with those 3 things, you can make any aspect of your life work. Without those, it's going to be a struggle and be difficult.
Jazakallah khair. I think that is super, super powerful, the way that you connected that. The communication is the bridge between the 2 things, and one's about inner, one's about outer. And I think that is, that is super, super beneficial, inshallah. Tons of value there for our audience. Okay, just before we let you go, inshallah, we're going to have a bit of fun with some quick fire round questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So these are, I always ask the same questions to my guests. So
Okay.
inshallah, let's find out a bit about you then. Are you burger or pizza?
Oh, tough question. That's probably the toughest question of the podcast. So at the moment, I'm fed up of pizza, so burger.
Yeah.
Chicken burger. Chicken burger.
Okay, nice. Very specific. Okay. Do you put your socks on before or after your trousers when getting ready?
After.
After, okay. Do you brush your teeth before or after breakfast?
Before. Definitely before.
Movies or series when you have the time?
When I have the time, series, but these days it's movies because I just don't have the time for series.
What's your favorite series?
Oh, another tough one. I don't think I could pinpoint one because there's been so many good ones.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites, like the original first 2 seasons of Prison Break, Heroes was good. The first few seasons of Game of Thrones was good. And one that not a lot of people know about was one called Banshee. Like, there's only 4 seasons of it, but it's just pure entertainment. Dexter, and of course, every Muslim has an affinity to ethereal. So I'll put that one in there as well.
Some good ones. That's some good ones. Dexter's pretty crazy. Personal development books or novels?
Novels,
Okay,
100% novels.
really? I actually thought you were going to go the personal development.
No,
So that's really cool.
personal development books are good, but nothing gets your creative juices flowing than novels. So I don't know if you can see at the top row there, those are novels, and those were probably what gave me better English, creativity, imagination, vision. Whereas with these self-help books, yeah, you can get some good ones, but a lot of them are overrated. Like, I've got self-help books, people are saying that this is fantastic. And then when you read them, it's like, this is just marketing fluff, man. There's nothing of substance in there. It's just more trying to make you feel good rather than giving you actionable advice. But obviously, if you do come across some good ones, then obviously they are great. But for me, it'd be novels rather than self-help books.
Okay, and is there a novel that you highly recommend we read?
Oof, I could go on all day, but top shelf there you can see a lot of David Gemmell books. I love all of his books, and yeah, just start there.
Yeah, I'll go there then. Okay, ketchup or mayo, or is there another sauce that you like? Maybe chili or burger sauce?
Mint sauce.
Mint sauce. Chutney. Okay, cool. And the final question, inshallah, business owner or employee?
Okay, this is the paradox of entrepreneurship. Right now, I would say business owner, and it'd be very, very difficult for me to be an employee. However, had I known what I would have had to go through on this business journey before I left employment, I wouldn't have done it.
That's a really honest answer. But actually, I would like to actually ask why then? Why knowing now what you know as a business owner, would you have stayed as an employee?
Basically, the stress, the struggle, the hardships, like, when you don't know about it, it's easier to get through because you don't know what you expect. If you know, it's kind of like you're seeing the mountain before you start. And if I knew that's the mountain that I'm gonna have to climb, it'd be like, oh, I can't do it. Whereas if you don't see the mountain, you just see the next hill or the next hill. It's easy to do. But if you know about it before, it will just seem more like an insurmountable kind of, obstacle. But and obviously, the flip side to that is obviously that I wouldn't have had the development and I wouldn't be the man I am today without that journey. So, I know these days there's this debate of, you should either be a business owner or whatnot. But if you can find a good employer, somebody who's going to treat you with respect, who's going to treat you right, and you can find a good job, stick with it. The only reason I did business and entrepreneurship is because I hated those jobs. I hated the career. I hated everything about it, other than, the people that I met, and I made some good friends, but the career itself, in other words, my driving force is more the disdain I had for that career than it is the passion to create something bigger. Obviously, that passion is still there, but the emotional driver is higher of me trying to stay away from that miserable lifestyle that I had before.
I think that's super powerful. And I think actually I'm going to take a lesson out of that. And that's sometimes us not seeing the challenge ahead of us. So like you said, if you'd have seen the mountain, maybe you'd have never taken that leap of faith. And I think that sometimes there's two ways you can look at this. This one way is like, that always comes down to our mindset.
Yes.
That, if I see something that's going to be too hard, I straight away put a red flag and nope, I'm not going to try it. And also there's the other way of looking at it is sometimes it's actually better for us not to know what challenges are coming.
Mhm.
And, you know, I remember once when we climbed the mountain and you always thought that that was the peak. And as soon as you got to that peak, it was like, that was just the peak.
No.
The mountain is actually huge, right? And it's just made up of these little peaks at every, like, you know, 2 miles, 3 miles. So, and you get that glimmer of hope. It's like, oh yeah, I'm there. You get to that peak, you're like, oh no, you still got all of that to go. And then, subhanallah, you know. Okay, inshallah, is there anything before we go that you would like to shout out where people can find you? Obviously, I'm going to put the links in and around the video, but if there's anything that you specifically want to share where people can find you and access you before we go, inshallah, you can do that now.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm on pretty much every social media platform, Zulfaqar Faraz, so whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or I've even got a YouTube channel. So it depends on whoever's listening. Like if you are an individual who's struggling with maybe, you know, confidence of speaking and self-esteem issues, and, you know, you want to overcome these and build yourself a brand by starting a podcast, you know, you can find me on those platforms. If you're a business owner looking to scale by obviously scaling your current operations and buying other businesses, in other words, making acquisitions, then we have a YouTube channel called Ethical Empires, which is a business I'm running with my partner from America called David, who is, you know, somebody who I met from doing my podcast. So final words is, you know, if you're struggling for opportunities and looking for change, start a podcast. You will find many opportunities on that journey, as well as it being the biggest self-improvement journey and drive that you will go on, which it was for me.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Bro, this conversation has been absolutely enlightening and an amazing conversation to have. Jazakallah khair for coming on. And
Thank
for
you for having me.
Jazakumullah khair for tuning in and watching this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it and found value in it as much as I have. And inshallah, I will see you in the next episode. Don't forget to follow us at Muslim Emir UK on Instagram, and to click and subscribe and like this video. And inshallah, to stay up to date with all of our videos that are coming soon. I've been Usama Musa at Muslim Emir. Jazakallah khair for joining us. And subhanaka rabbi hamdik astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum.